just to make sure, do you all see?
Yes.
Very good. And the truth is that, as I did last time around too, I will begin by connecting something that was mentioned last class when Rabbi Lori was teaching, and we came across this very important, poignant question about our relationship with death and how hard it is to talk about it and to make sense of it, or to prepare for it, whether it is for ourselves or our dear ones. And the truth is that I want to connect that challenge with something that I think it's very much something that is connected to the way our society um, relates to death, which is usually our society likes to hide the fact that we die. This is something that Foucault, the French thinker, used to say. We tend to put the things that we don't want to deal with behind thick walls, like people who are sick, people who are crazy, or people who die. That was, historically the case. The way we do it today is we try to make them invisible by other means. So our cemeteries look like gardens. If you have been to a cemetery in Israel, or a classic Jewish cemetery in other parts of the world, maybe in Prague, for example, the old cemetery, you know that cemeteries don't look like beautiful green gardens. And part of the reason for that to happen is connected to the fact that it's a way to deny dying and death, because it's very tough. And the truth is that I want to connect that with something. Since we are in Pesach, let me do this. On last Saturday night, we had our first Passover Seder, and there is something very unique that we get to do when we present the matzah for the first time during the Passover Seder. What do we do? The first thing that we do when we present the matzah is to break the matzah, right? Now, what do we do with the big part? Anyone remembers? We just did it. We hide it. We will use it later on for the afikoman. Now, I think that one of the reasons this happens is that this is what naturally we do with the things that pain us the most. We try to hide those things that break us, okay? Our scars, our shortcomings, our disappointments, our sorrows and pains, it is a natural thing for us to try to hide them away, okay? And that is how we begin the Seder. But probably one of the most insightful, deep parts of the Seder is that afikoman comes at the very end of the dinner. And what's the name of that moment during the Passover Seder? Anyone remembers? After the Shulchan Orech comes? Do you remember the name of the step when we eat the afikoman? No? Okay. So when we...
Tzafun.
The tzafun. Thank you so much. So the tzafun. What is tzafun in Hebrew? Tzafun is hidden. Okay. So what do we need to do? We need to make visible what it is hidden. We need to bring out those things that we tend to hide away. By the way, interestingly enough, tzafun is hidden, but it is connected in Hebrew to the word matzpun, which is consciousness, or the cricket that we have here saying what we should do or what we should not do, or matzpen, which is the compass pointing to where we need to go. So I think that one way that we can deal with the afterlife, death, pain, and loss, according to what we learn on Passover, is to try to make peace with those things. Instead of hiding them away, try to make peace with those things. And by bringing them back, you know, it's not that it's not gonna pain. It's gonna be hard. But the way we move forward and we deal with death, with our own death, with our own mortality, the mortality of the people we love the most, is by talking about these things, not by pretending that those things are not there. So that was the first thing that I wanted to share with you, because it is connected to Pesach. It is connected to brokenness and the ways we fix or we deal with those scars. But now, you know, what I want to share with you today is something that shows in a page of Talmud. So this is a page of Talmud. It's a long page of Talmud, but you know, it's a great page of Talmud from the tractate Shabbat on page 31a. It's a famous page of Talmud because the famous stories about Hillel and the person that wants to convert and comes to Shammai, and Shammai kicks him out and goes to Hillel. Do you all? I guess that some of you know these stories. You know, tell me, what is Judaism about in 1 minute while I'm standing in 1 foot? And Shammai kicks the person out, and Hillel says, "Don't do to someone else the things that you don't like to be done to you." That is Judaism. The rest is commentary. That comes on this beautiful page of Talmud. But the truth is that I will be focusing on the 3 lines that come at the very end of that page. And those lines are important to our conversation because these lines will provide us with 5 or 6, actually there will be 6, but the last 2 I will put together, 5 questions that we are asked when we die and are summoned, you know, next to the gates of heaven by someone who will be asking us questions. Okay? So the Talmud says the following. Amar Rava. Rava said, after departing from this world, when a person is brought to judgment for the life he lived in this world, they say to him, they will ask that person a couple of questions. So before I share with you the first one, by the way, this text certainly assumes that there is an afterlife, and the afterlife will present us in some sort of a trial in which we will be asked questions. So before I share with you the first one, for those of you who do not know this Talmudic text, which is the first question that you think you will be asked when, you know, facing the gates of heaven in order to see if you are granted entry to the Garden of Eden or not?
Were you honest in your business dealings?
Very nice. So Heidi knows the story, the text. So any other takes? That's the right answer. But now let's do, what do you think should be the first question?
Were you as good a person as you could have been?
Okay. What else?
Yeah, I was going to say, have you led a virtuous life?
A virtuous life, a good person. Nice.
Were you
Have you
one at a time, Judy, and I don't know who else.
okay? Have you treated others well?
Okay. How did you treat other human beings? Natalie?
Were you kind?
Were you kind? Okay, so now this is the first question that we will be asked when we get to heaven. Nasata venatata ve'emunah. Did you conduct business faithfully? And so my question to you is, first is, how do you understand this question? And second is, why? Why this question comes first when knocking on heaven's doors?
How do you know that that's the first question?
Well, we don't know. This is what the Talmud says. So the Talmud brings this idea from this Babylonian rabbi, says this, you know, I have the 5, 6 questions that we will be asked in heaven. How does he know? I don't know. Is he making all these things up? Probably. Still, I think it is relevant as an opportunity to think about what is behind this set of questions and what is that teaching us about the afterlife and this life.
And
Okay?
Rabbi,
Yes.
if I could interject, just the whole idea that we would be held accountable in a reflective way for our lifetime, in this sort of in-between phase of having passed but not yet reached the afterlife, is in fact what we rehearse annually when we come together for Yom Kippur. And so we do that, just for the year that's passed. We reflect on our behavior and our actions, and then make all kinds of vows and promises for the year ahead, and then go through the cycle again. So when they say that, when we learn and study that Yom Kippur is a way of rehearsing, a dress rehearsal for our own death, it is in fact these same questions that we ask then, that we will then be asking or be asked ultimately at the end, at least according, as Rabbi said, to the rabbis of the Talmud. I love the question about why is this the first question, because it has everything to do with the way in which we see others and their value.
Nice. It's
And
like, I agree.
Rabbi?
Yes.
When one conducts business faithfully, we are conducting ourselves not just to people whom are friends, but to the general population. So for me, it encompasses a larger group of people, and conducting your businesses could mean many different things, not just commercially, but just how you conduct yourself generally and how you see others.
Nice. Well, so there is something that I think is, rings very true. It's like the first question is not, although the fact that, for example, were you a good father, a good son, a good husband, a good friend? Those things, not that it's so obvious that we are good by any means. Here, the question is way, that assumes that you should be good to the people that you love, because that would come natural to you. Again, not that any of this comes every time and at all times easily to us, but I think that you are right in the expansion of, okay? We tend to believe that you would be kind to the people you love. What happens with the people that you are having dealings with no emotional attachment? Where you
Rabbi?
care? Yes.
Also, well, from what I learned was that in business, you have an advantage if you're conducting business, that you have knowledge in that area. Therefore, if people come to you, it would be easy to take advantage of these people. So that to be honest in your business is to treat people correctly, whether they don't understand what you're doing and you explain it. From what I had studied before, it was more of a measurement. It's easy, if you're measuring something out for someone, it's easy to put your finger on the scale and not to be honest with people that don't know that they're not on the same knowledge level that you are.
100%. So this question connects not only the interpersonal relationships, with people you love and with people you don't know, but also brings the layer of justice. Mm-hmm. So the first question is asking regarding justice. Now,
Rabbi, is this assuming that the last part of your life, and you don't know when the last part's going to be, but is this what's taken into account? I mean, if somebody is not honest or not good as a young person and then changes, or as Rabbi Laurie said, after Yom Kippur, you change your ways. So are you being judged by the last thing you did or your entire life?
It's a good question. I think that you are judged by the wholeness of your life, but the Jewish tradition takes into account the moment of teshuvah. So the fact that you have not been the best version of yourself doesn't count you out if you repent and change your ways. So still, this is, as Rabbi Lori was saying, a moment of reflection. It's the moment in which we think about where we were in life and what, we can point to our mistakes, and also to the moments in which we got it right. So let me say something about the justice aspect that Heidi was mentioning, because in the Torah, once and again, we actually speak about the weights and the very strong advice or even command that the Torah says, don't mess with the weights. So don't use your expertise to bring other people down. Now, how do you say justice in Hebrew? Do you remember the famous verse, justice, justice you shall pursue?
Tzedek.
Tzedek. Okay, tzedek is the word for justice. Now, what is the word for social justice? Tzedakah. So in Hebrew, social justice and justice, we do the very important work of repairing this world, not because we are moved by our hearts. That is not a wrong thing, but it's not because we feel like we have to do it. It's because we have to do it. In the Torah, social justice is a commandment. It's an ethical obligation. It doesn't depend whether you feel it or you don't. Okay? And this question, did you conduct business faithfully? Were you someone to be trusted? Were you able to do justice or to engage with social justice? Is the first question that we get to be asked. Any other comments that you want to add about this one before we jump into the second one?
Rabbi,
Yes.
so those of us who are in business, we often talk about all we have is our good name.
Mm-hmm.
And if we don't conduct ourselves and our business to maintain our good name, then we shouldn't be in that business.
100%. And in the Hebrew tradition, there is a verse in the Bible, Tov Shem Mishemen Tov, which is, by the way Sephardi Jews will begin with the memorial prayer. Tov Shem Mishemen Tov, better a good name than the best of oils. Okay, the name is the only thing you have, so you have to be extremely careful in how you do, because your name is on it. Okay, are you ready for the second question? Second question, kabata itim la Torah, which is Hebrew for, did you designate times for Torah study? Okay, no, sorry, but that's not the second question. Give me 1 second. Well, could be. It's the second question. Yes, I have a wrong order, but it's okay. So, kabata itim la Torah. What do you have to say about this second question? Once we have proven ourselves to be faithful in our businesses, that we work for justice, for social justice, so we kind of got into the next level. The next level asks our relationship with Torah study. What do you have to say about this?
Does this count?
I was just going to say.
Yeah, this is, everything is Torah. So yes, this counts.
Yeah, it's learning.
Okay.
Torah study, Janet, is just, it's learning.
So.
And
I feel better now.
Very good. So
Janet, you've been very consistent. And I would say, I recently saw a meme that this particular question Rabbi is making me think of, which is, all your dreams come true on the other side of consistency. Right? So the idea of designating times for anything that you value, but in this case, Torah study. And why Torah study? Because Talmud Torah Keneged Kulan. Right? Our rabbis believed, and we say it in our prayers, that the study of Torah leads to every other deed we should, in fact, be engaged in.
Now, it's interesting that, last week in a different Torah group conversation, that we took part with Rabbi Lori, we were having the conversation regarding the tension between the actions and the learning. What should come first, the deeds or the learning? Here we are not being asked by the, regarding our deeds. Maybe that was, asked on question number 1. Now we are being asked about our engagement with, the actualization of our learning. The fact that, in Hebrew we call the Talmid. Talmid is Hebrew for student. Some, long time ago, I heard one of my teachers saying that Talmid is actually the putting together of the words Tamid Yeled, someone who is always a child, in this idea of the curiosity and the willingness to continue in the learning and the discovery of new things to be learned. Okay. Now, why do you think that? Because studying Torah, we always talk about that. But to Rabbi Lori's point, the point of the question here is on the first Hebrew word, which is kabata, likboa, which is to fix specific times for studying. Why do you think that is important, or if you think that this is important or not at all?
Well, if you don't have a specific time, you're very likely not to do it. Certainly not consistently, that is important in terms of learning.
Correct. So if you don't make time in your weekly schedule for some study, it won't happen, because the way we live our lives, especially in the 21st century, even in the midst of the pandemic, is that life comes through and then we don't have time for anything. So this question is actually nudging us to make time, because if you don't make time, time just doesn't show up. Okay, in the Jewish tradition, we have a couple of tricks. So for example, we have this wonderful project that I was lucky enough to be back on track after 7 years. It's like we do Daf Yomi. Daf Yomi is we learn 1 page of Talmud a day. Do you know how many pages of Talmud there are? 2711. So 2,711 pages, which means that the project of studying 1 page of Talmud a day takes 7.5 years to complete. So in our world, making a commitment of 7.5 years doesn't happen with almost anything. And the tradition says, you know what? 1 page of Talmud a day. You don't have to just study until you are exhausted. Study 1 page, take 7.5 years, and you will make it there. So again, I tell the story. I began the last cycle in 2012. I did a year and some, and I even had a blog where I posted about the page of the day. And then on 2013, I became the rabbi of Nashville. So there was one of the rabbis of Nashville, the rabbi here at West End. I didn't have any more time. So it's like this fixed time to study Talmud 1 page a day, gone. 7.5 years later, I pick up mid-January back where I left 7.5 years ago. And so far, so good. But, 2 months. So give me some time. But I think that, that's a trick. Commit to study 1 page of something a day. If you study 1 chapter of Bible a day, there are 900 and something, chapters. Okay. It will take you some, 3 years. You can read the whole Bible. It's like a little bit, but makes a huge difference. Okay. Now, the last thing I want to share with you about this question, because I think it's important. It's like, do you remember Pirkei Avot? In Pirkei Avot, which is the sages of the sayings of the sages, they ask, Eizeu Chacham, who is a wise person? Do you remember what's the answer to who is a wise person according to the Pirkei Avot?
Halamed mikol adam.
Very nice, Rabbi. The one who is capable of learning from everybody. So maybe the connection here is that when you have a mind that is fixed in finding the times to study, it's not 7 hours a day, even 15 minutes a day, you shape your soul in a way that makes you more prone to learn from everybody. By the way, that might be also one of the reasons why the Talmud is always a variety of voices saying X, Y, Z, A and minus A or minus A all the time. When you study these classic Jewish texts, you actually learn how to cope with people thinking something different than what you think. Yeah. Not a bad skill to nurture in our times, by the way. Okay? So second question, all of those things, but we need to get going because the day is short and the melacha merubah, there's plenty of work. So number, yes.
I have trouble with that. I mean, I do enjoy your Mishnah class, and I do enjoy learning, and everyone's invited to join us. But the question is pure and simple. I mean, a lot of people don't study Torah or the Testament, Old or New, and you're not going to say they cannot go to heaven.
No, again, yes, you're right. I think that this is a road map for the type of things that the Talmud find important, okay? Again, is Rava, the original rabbi who came with all these questions, knowing that if you say, no, I didn't study the Torah, or I don't care about studying at all, they will be kicked out of heaven? There's no way to know, okay? The questions here are, and this is my point if you want, these questions that we will be asked at the gates of heaven in the afterlife are actually a good checklist to see or reflect back to how do we live our lives today. Because today we actually do know that if we become more learned, that is actually a good thing. I said this before, so I will say it again. To me, one of the biggest challenges for contemporary, progressive, liberal, non-Orthodox Judaism is Jewish literacy. So it's not the intermarriage, it's not assimilation, it's not nothing of that. It's like the biggest challenge that we face is Jewish literacy. And the way you fix Jewish literacy is by learning, by stepping up the literacy barrier. So if we understand that is important, I don't need to wait until I'm asked this question at the gates of heaven to make sure that we get the fruits of these things in our days.
And Marcia, I like the question you asked, because I think a lot of us want to ask that question more often. And one of the things I try and remind myself and impart to others is that we should be careful when we're inclined to take the text literally, as well as keep in mind sort of the social historical reality of the time. So the Talmud and the Torah text and our sages were living in a particular time and exposed to particular ideas, and those are going to bias and color what they teach us and what they record. And I hope that one of the things we've been able to present through this series is that the way that Judaism thinks about the afterlife is completely and almost entirely a reflection on how it is we should conduct ourselves in this life, and how we should honor and feel gratitude for the days that we have in this life because of the uncertainty of what might come next. And so when I feel put off by a question like that, like, really, the way you said it was so perfect. If I don't study every day, you're not going to let me into heaven. You're not going to give me the afterlife. I pause to remind myself that sometimes we are meant to be shocked by the suggestion so that we really give it solid thought in this lifetime. The example I often point to is from a parsha that we won't come to until the early June, but Shalach in the book of Numbers. At the very end of that parsha, the community comes upon a man who is found gathering wood on Shabbat. and they consult, what should we do? What should the punishment be? And they determined that the punishment should be to stone him to death. And we read that section sort of at the very tail end of the parsha and think, my gosh, what a harsh punishment that the community would inflict upon this poor man who may not have even realized it was Shabbat, or he needed fire, or he needed to nourish his family by, gathering wood on Shabbat. And I think those are the kinds of moments that are meant to shock us into thinking about, well, why is the Torah so severe and serious about us taking a rest day? What's the implication of not doing that? So anyway, I love your question, because I think it's easy to get sidelined sometimes by the literality of it. But if we can take a step back and say, well, what are we supposed to be focusing on in this life as a result of what that just said? Does that make sense?
Which is, by the way, a good segue to question number 3.
I figured as much. So there you go, Rabbi, take it away.
Yes, so Asakta befriya urbiya, did you engage in procreation? Okay, so again, there is a literal aspect of this. Remember that having children is the first commandment in the Torah that Adam and Eve will get. But certainly the question can be and should be made by people who cannot have children or decide not to have children. Okay, and yeah, well, are they out of heaven? No, certainly not, because here the Jewish tradition actually opens a variety of ways of kind of instilling something or inspiring the next generations. And actually, probably the question here is, do you have a vision for the future? Have you make sure that you help today sustaining what will happen tomorrow? Okay, so one way of doing that is by having children. Another way of doing that is by adopting children. A third way, those who are role models to the next generation, regardless of their biological connections to the next generation. The point here that the Talmud, I think, is trying to make is, do you have a long-term vision? It's this idea that life doesn't begin and end with you. For you, it begins and ends in you. But life is something that is way bigger than yourself. And so part of this question is the idea to provide for future generations. It also includes the question about, how good of a father or mother are you? Okay, so it's not on the biological end of the spectrum, it's more on the existential end of the spectrum. Okay, so how do you spend your time making sure that you have a relationship with your children? All of these are important questions for ourselves as parents, as children, and so forth. So something that I like about this text is that with 3 words, it actually opens up a wealth of associations. Okay, that again allows us to think or to kind of map ourselves in whatever place we are in life right now. Miri?
Yes, so I think teachers are included here in making sure that our children have a better future. And I want to kind of backtrack to what Marcia said about the previous thing about Torah. I think it's also living Torah. So when you do for others, you're not literally looking at the book and reading the Torah, but you're living the Torah, Torah Chaim. You're learning from life and how you live it. I think that should be included too, not just reading it in a book. And Marcia, you live Torah.
And, based on that, there's a famous phrase that Abraham Joshua Heschel, Zichrono Livracha, used to say that, instead of being it's not about learning from the book, it's from the educators to become text people. So the educators being the book that the students read. And so how, again, we become role models in, our lives, so that others reading us something that will be meaningful to them. okay, and will inspire them to do good and to be good. Nanette.
Yes, get to this procreation. When I became a teacher, I chose to go and teach in a day school because I felt as though I needed I really wanted to teach children, about Judaism. And so I was a regular, I wasn't the Hebrew teacher or taught religion, but I was in the day school teaching like the classes. And it really, not only does it help the kids, but I learned so much from that particular surrounding. I taught in day school for over 20 years, and it really becomes a part of you. So it was just a wonderful experience. That's all.
Nice. That's good. Are you ready for question number 4? I want to make sure that we are done on time, hopefully, so that you have all the questions you need to work on by the time you get to heaven. Number 4, Tzipita or Tzapita Lishua, do you hope for salvation? How do you understand this question? Later I will give you my take, but what is this question about?
About forgiveness?
Okay. How do you connect the salvation with forgiveness?
That you can be better and you can change your ways. If you've done something wrong, that you can still repair what you've done.
Nice. Nice. Who else? Any other takes?
Maybe
yeah, Barbara or Mary?
Just means I'm muted. Okay. Maybe it means, did you think about what comes next? Somebody once said, I don't want to leave this world, but I'm curious about what happens next. Maybe it means, were you somebody who thought beyond this life? Maybe that's a guess.
Nice. Again, it's like, I like guests because we don't know. So it's like every association is welcomed. Barbara?
Well, I was just going to say that to me, it seems to be a reflection on the consequences of your actions. So as you go through your life, are you always reflective about what you're doing and how it's impacting others and yourself, and making sure that you're sort of thinking about doing good in the world and that you're being the best version of yourself?
Nice. Nice. Pam?
I think that it relates to something you said earlier, is about thinking the big picture. It's just, hoping it's not just about, it stops with us, but it goes through the other generations. It lives through other people. And I think I echo what everybody else said about our actions. And where our actions are like waves, and what does that look like on the other side of the world? Do I hope for that I, what I've done in this life, the teshuvas, the mitzvahs, all of those things that I've done, all the things that I've tried to do in this world, when it comes back around, that bigger picture, what does that look like for, that I may not see, but what do I want for that?
Nice.
And it's not just for this life or in the next as well.
Nice. Nice.
To me, it implies that you have a belief in God, that you may have a source that you're hoping for. So to me, it just says, do you have faith?
Okay. Nice. So the salvation, it's, and the tzipita lishua, it's you connected to the idea of, do you have faith? Nice.
Correct.
Nice. Natalie?
I think the word in there that strikes me is the word of hope.
Nice.
The fact that you're hoping for something positive.
So, okay, nice. Let's, I will try to sum up, and so we can continue, just because so rich and so many things. The question has 2 words in Hebrew, tzipita lishua. Tzipita, the idea of letzapot, to hope. I think that, as you just said, Natalie, this idea of, did you live your life with hope? It's like, today we actually see the clash between people who tend to embrace hope and people who prefer to engage in fear. You know, fear and hope are two very different ways of living life. Not that, you know, you need to choose one or the other. Many times we have both, but they are very distinctive ways of engaging in life, engaging in politics, engaging in whatever. Okay? So what moves you? Is the fear of X, Y, or Z, or the hope to see something happening in your lifetime? It's like, what's the role of hope? Again, it's not the word in Hebrew, but not by chance. In Hebrew, the national anthem of the state of Israel is connected to Atikva, which is the hope. And so hope is very much engraved in the DNA of the Jewish people. There is a big difference between being an optimist and to have hope. You know, the Eric Fromm used to say that optimism is the alienated form of faith. So it's like hoping, it's not hoping. It's like the optimist who says everything's gonna get better. Spoiler alert, it doesn't, because the way things get better if you do something about them, okay? Especially the things that you can control and manage. But it's not that things are just gonna be okay by mere wish. It's like the hope here, the faith, is not dissociated from doing something about it. And then Yeshua, salvation. We are now during Pesach, the time in which we actually remember when we left Egypt, when we were able to finally leave the constrained world of Mitzrayim, the world, the land of Tzures, of troubles and travails, and we are on our way to the promised land. The question then is, are you hoping to get there? Are you on your way there? Not that you will make it, okay? Different story. But do you have that hope that it is doable? Question number 5, which is actually 2 questions. Pilpalta bechokma, ebanta dabar mitoch dabar. Hebrew 4, did you engage in the dialectics of wisdom or understand one matter from another? In Hebrew, I will try to rush a bit just because, you know, time is very tyrant. Interestingly enough, here we see 2 words that are Hebrew for different aspects of thinking about things. One is chokhmah, and the other is bina. Chokhmah, which is Hebrew for wisdom, is the type of wisdom that you gain from experience. Bina, understanding, is the capacity or the ability that we may have to, you know, understand things and arguments and drawing conclusions or reaching conclusions from just deep thinking about stuff. To me, this question is about priorities. There is no possibility to make good decisions if you don't have any idea of what is important and what is not. You know, something that, in management books, they ask if you know how to define between what is important and what is urgent. Many times we live our lives trying to deal with what is urgent, even if that is not important. Why? Because we don't put our brains and our chokhmah, our wisdom, into try to understand what should take our time and what should not take our time. Okay?
And Rabbi, I'm sorry.
Yes, go.
I just think that's connected to this notion of bina. I always think of bina as a discerning judgment. Correct. And the idea about that we are meant to be deliberate in judgment, that we can't do that without the chokhmah. We have to have the wisdom that then allows us to be discerning, to your point, between what is urgent, what is important, and maybe both at the same time. It depends. But the idea of being discerning and deliberate in our judgment goes beyond just that. It then brings us back to the first question of, were we be'emunah in our business dealings with faith and honesty, you know, that we will be thoughtful in our judgments and in our own proclivities to ask questions about why is that our reaction? What are we biased? You know, do we harbor resentments? How does that affect the way that we behave in the world? So anyway.
No, and fully agree. And the truth is that usually, this sounds weird, but I think that the pandemic brought us this huge possibility to actually think about this particular question with more attention than usual. Because since the rules of the game were changed radically, I think that many of us have, given some thought as, to the way we use time, to the way we engage with work and with family and with life, the way we put effort in this project or another project. All of those things, when life is normal, usually the trap is that it doesn't allow us any possibility of thinking about these things. The world became so disrupted in the last year that it gave us the opportunity to think. Okay, it's like, do I need to be rushing from place to place, living my life in my work, instead of spending it with my family? I don't know, that type of thing. It's like, and only now that the world changed or was disrupted, we found some time to think about these things and to make hopefully, some decisions, which are important. It's like, because at the end of the day, the question is, what matters to you? It's like, not at the end of the day when the, afterlife and the gates of heaven. The question then brings us back to today. It's like, in what are you spending your time? It's like, do you have a clear understanding, this ability to make smart decisions about the way you live your life? Pam, do you have anything to say?
I think of the word triage. Being a social worker, and I'm often feeling I'm always triaging what is important, what's more important in, with my clients, which ones I need to spend more time on. What I have more problem with is triaging my own life, because I'm so sucked into the social work aspect of triaging all of those. So this question, I think, like I said, it goes right back to the first one. I know who I am as a social worker ethically. I know who I am as a person. But I think that it's triaging my own life from day to day. I find, it's, not working till 7 o'clock at night and getting back up and doing another 10-hour day, or, it's very, can be very complicated for me. And it's like, I'm so grateful. Talk about Torah learning. I'm so grateful for YouTube, because I've been able to catch up on these classes because of trying to triage my own life. So I think that's the word that comes to mind, is triage for me.
Nice.
Sam, I love that you said that, because it brings us back, I think, to what Rabbi Kolak asked at the beginning with the Afikomen and Safon, and the idea of what we hide away and what we make visible. And sometimes, and I am in this category as well, we can use the busyness and triaging of our professional life to sort of mask and hide the things we don't want to manage or deal with or face in our personal life. And yet this is the time of year and the time of Pesach when we might say, okay, let's uncover that and see what we can do differently going forward.
Correct. So bonus track, I have 2 other questions. Number 1, quickly, Rabbi Telushkin, in his book Jewish Wisdom, tells the story of Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch, who surprised his students one day when, as he neared the end of his life, he insisted on traveling to Switzerland. Perplexed, his students asked him why such a journey was so important to him. In response, he explained, "When I stand shortly before the Almighty, I will be held answerable to many questions, but what will I say when God asks?" And he is certain to ask, "Shimshon, did you see my Alps?" Okay, interesting question, because this is coming from the founder of what is known as the Neo-Orthodox movement in Germany in the 19th century. And the question is, okay, did you enjoy your time on earth? So in our tradition, there is no requirement to negate life and the pleasurable things of life, as long as they don't go against the Torah if you want. But the point is that there is no self-denial as a spiritual goal. Nobody wants that, okay? By the way, the Jewish tradition invites us to say 100 blessings every day among other things, because that way we can stop 100 times every day to be amazed and in awe for the wonderful miracles that surround our lives. So if we go through life and we just don't have any time to see the beauty out there, something is profoundly wrong. It's kind of God saying, no, you didn't understand anything, go back, which, would connect to what we spoke about in, previous classes about the reincarnation. Okay, you just didn't learn the lesson, go back and repeat. And the last one, Martin Buber tells the story of the great Hasidic Rabbi Susha of Anipol. On his deathbed, he began to cry uncontrollably, and his students and disciples tried hard to comfort him. They asked him, Rabbi, why do you weep? You are almost as wise as Moses, and you are almost as hospitable as Abraham, and surely heaven will judge you favorably. Susha answered them, it is true. When I get to heaven, I won't worry so much if God asks me, Susha, why were not you more like Abraham? Or Susha, why were you not more like Moses? I know I would be able to answer these questions. After all, I was not given the righteousness of Abraham or the faith of Moses, but I tried to be both hospitable and thoughtful. But what will I say when God asks me, Susha, why were you not more like Susha? Which is a wonderful, insightful, deep question that reminds us that if we spend our time trying to be somebody else, no one will have the time to be ourselves. Okay? If we go through life trying to be, a wonderful soccer player as Messi, which, you should all know what soccer is and who Messi is. The question is, who will have any time to be you, whoever you are? Okay, and so this idea brings us back to the point of in Judaism, we are always in this ongoing journey of self-improvement, in which the goal is not to be perfect. It's just to try to be the best version of ourselves every single day. And this idea of responsibility as the ability to respond to the call that is only ours. Okay, it's like this idea of, if you understand responsibility as the ability to respond, we are all called, as Abraham was called, Lech Lecha. Everyone is calling us to do something, and it is our job to figure out what is our calling in life, and to try to do the best out of that calling, because that is when we become the best version of who we are. Okay?
And I would say, Rabbi, you said that so eloquently, that is the answer to why do we explore the afterlife from a Jewish perspective, to get to that end conclusion. That all of it is meant to encourage us to think more about who we can be the fullest of ourselves in this life.
I agree. Judy?
Well, it's something similar to that, but basically all of these questions, it seems to me, lead to one particular question, is who are you, or who were you? Because it really embodies everything about you as a person, and they all seem to bind together into one basic question.
I agree, and I will just add a small tweak, just because I think that the tradition is less essentialist or ontologically oriented, if you want, than, who are you? It's like, what do you do? It's like, to me, it may sound very trivial, but I think that in Judaism in general, there is an ongoing question regarding not who you are, but how that thing that you are is manifested in your actions. It's like, what do you do by means of transforming these worlds in a better place? And so again, it's like, how can we use the afterlife in order to reflect back to where we are right now? Because the Jewish tradition says it's never too late And, it doesn't matter your choices up to this point, for good or bad. The bad choices should not condemn you from changing and do something different. And the good choices are no longer so important because this is something that you need to do every single day. So even if you have a bunch of good choices in your bank account, you still need to continue because those are not enough.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a lot of work, by the way. Salvation in Jewish tradition is never easy, but it's an ongoing process of making this world a better place. And the last thing, I know that we are running 2 minutes late, but I want to go back to the broken matzah for one last comment regarding the afterlife. Okay, which is connected to the tzafun, which is hidden, but from a different perspective. Okay, we had all this ongoing conversation. Is the afterlife real? It doesn't, does it exist or not? Whatever. And in the last couple of weeks, I was reading once again about the string theory. Have you ever heard about theoretical physics? There is this idea of the theory of strings, the strings theory. Do you know anything about it? Maybe? No? Okay, the idea is that in order to make sure that quantum physics and the gravity, for example, they work well together, because quantum physics works very well on its own. Gravity and the Newtonian physics, they work very well on their own, but when you put them both together, it doesn't make any sense. So the string theory tries to connect between the two of them. But the interesting thing is that for string theory to work, you need to create a universe with more dimensions than the ones we know. Okay? The only way for all of the physics to work together is by assuming that there are more dimensions to reality than the ones that we can grasp. And the fact that that happens in physics is a wonderful metaphor of what happens with these ideas. It may not be able, it may not happen that we get to prove that the afterlife exists or it doesn't. But the fact that we cannot find ways to prove the existence doesn't mean that it's not there. And it might be that the existence of what we cannot prove still helps to the way we live our lives here. So it makes sense today. And I think it's a for those skeptics about the afterlife, don't be so fast to deny the existence of the afterlife if you cannot prove it. Life has plenty of those things in very serious aspects. And so the fact that we cannot prove doesn't mean that it does not exist. And if not anything else, it has proven that it gives us 6 hours of talking together, analyzing these things as we think about those things coming later, and as we review or revisit how our lives are being lived today.
So if we were together, we would pass around something sweet to culminate this siyum. And thank you all for making it through 6 hours with us. We hope you'll return for more. At the end of the month, as Rabbi Kulik mentioned at the beginning of class, Rabbi Kulik, Rabbi Mackler, and I will be doing a 2-part series on Jewish perspectives on the death penalty. 2 Wednesdays, the 21st and 28th at noon. I think you'll be able to sign up through the Temple, through Congregation Micah, and through West End. And Rabbi, if I could just promote one other offering that's not being taught by any of your local rabbis, but from a really terrific scholar at the Hebrew Union College, Dr. Ruvain Firestone, is giving a session next Tuesday at 5 o'clock on the Quran and the Jews. And if you're interested in that, the link will be on the Micah website, and it's for anybody who's interested. Again, Rabbi Ruvain Firestone is a preeminent mensch and scholar, and it should be a very engaging session. So I just want to promote that for anyone who's interested in the subject of the Quran and the intersection of Jews and the Quran. Please feel free to participate. Rabbi, anything else that you want to share or promote that's coming up?
No, for the time being, thank you everyone for being there. You know, you get a special prize. From 60, we went to 40, which is a pretty good number. And you all get probably a bigger parcel of the world to come because you endured with us and studied with us. And so, you know, thank you. We will continue.
Thank you